So, welcome. The first part of our crit, actually, we're going to ask you guys to stand up and walk through our gallery. So if you could exit the studio and then walk in as if you're entering a gallery. That would be lovely.
I thought you guys actually inspired music.
Oh,
that would be great.
love that.
Yes.
Place in two.
Far lake.
Allie, want to see now? Allie.
Museum lighting.
Should we tell them they can come in? Okay.
Stay out there.
The marbles are there. Also.
Galleries are playing.
That's fine. Yeah.
I think our first comment is bigger text right here.
Oh, that was the candy. Is it 30 seconds? Yeah.
Do you mind, Sarah, but tell them, the jury why you didn't, unless you did this morning, print your...
I know, I tried printing it,
Yeah.
but I couldn't get it.
You
Do
might
you want me
share.
to say it, or do you want to say it?
Well, I can.
Okay.
You first. Yeah, like how, yeah, medical records.
I
You
can
might not
pass
say
it
medical
pass
records.
around my doctors though.
I was just saying. Let's go ahead and start playing this with their seats. One of each.
On their seat. They're like separated.
Will you guys specify that? There's another piece of the project. You guys can specify that.
I was gonna present the book and then we.
You're going to over stuff.
Yeah, good.
Just trying to hire a phone.
What's that?
I already told them I may have to run.
Oh, okay, got it.
It's not nearly that important.
It's just our final.
What's that?
It's just our final presentation.
Yeah, no, right.
I'm kidding.
You should go out and tell them
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Is it Georgetown chapstick?
And then that brochure is actually the brochure.
Oh, yeah.
So what you find in front of you now is the brochure.
Are you starting?
Well, no, I just wanted to, I saw that they were looking through it. That was the brochure that we had at the opening there as well.
This was up in Riggs for 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, so we're going to it, and it's all over the place, which Olio will go into further
Oh, okay.
detail, yeah, shortly.
Cool.
We'll get to that shortly.
Okay.
Worry not.
He's chomping.
Trying to build up the intrigue. What?
Switch.
Okay.
Okay, so what you guys just walked through was part of the project that we've been putting on for the last few months. And this whole thing started when we were discussing our interests and we realized that we all were looking into the overlap between genes and technology, ultimately deciding to focus on personal genomics like we expressed in the last crit. And once we were researching, it was when President Obama announced the Precision Medicine Initiative that launched a $250 million project to recruit volunteers in the NIH for personal genomics. We realized that as members of PubCo, we wanted to design a project that would somehow help in recruiting volunteers for the NIH.
So initially we saw the Precision Medicine Initiative and other current projects going on as a gateway and a great place to start for formulating a project around personal genomics. Our initial goal was to get people to donate their genetic information for the public health benefit that we saw. Campaigns in both the public sector, such as the Precision Medical Initiative, as well as the marketing ploys of the private sector, such as 23andMe, make getting your genome sequenced very appealing. However, upon further research, we realized that it's not necessarily as simple, harmless, or cheap as it may seem. So there's no doubt that there are great benefits to getting your genome sequenced, such as the ability to trace your ancestry, as well as the opportunity to realize your potential health risks and take necessary precautions if those exist. However, there are also a ton of underemphasized repercussions. Getting your genome sequenced has the ability to entirely alter your personal life if you find out you have an uncurable disease or a genetic disease. And even if you do donate your genetic information anonymously, it does not always stay that way. In addition, companies such as 23andMe, we found out upon further research, have ulterior motives of selling your personal genetic information to larger pharmaceutical companies. Therefore, although there is the potential for both private and public health benefits upon sequencing your genome, we realized it wasn't necessarily our place to tell people if they should get tested, or if they should test their genome. Therefore, we decided instead to formulate a project in which we could start new dialogue and discussion around this topic of personal genomics.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about why we chose to use art. Lizzie Crouch, a science television producer, blogged, "Science produces facts that go to the head. Art produces beautiful things that mainly go to the heart. And if you want to influence people, you can influence the head. But if you want them to act, you really have to go through the heart." So with that sentiment in mind, we decided to go through the heart, especially since as Pubco, we're trying to create some sort of movement. So science is often thought of as a methodical, emotionless realm. In contrast, art is considered an almost purely emotional experience. Bioethics synthesizes human emotion and conscience with the impenetrable facts of science. These three areas of study are rarely used in conjunction. However, each has the power to contribute to and illuminate the others. Art, science, and ethical questions are therefore intimately connected. Science can inspire ethical questions, and art pieces that draw upon the topics at hand and inspire questioning in spectators. Art in turn inspires interest in learning about science and a deeper exploration into the ethical questions at hand. Artists can take a complex, distant topic and render it approachable, understandable, and interactive even. When it comes to microscopic processes, such as those taking place around and in the human genome, processes that are immensely difficult to comprehend simply because you can't visualize what's going on, art seems to be the most fitting and relevant tool. Therefore, we decided that art was the best, most direct way to inspire questions and thoughts surrounding the complex territory of personal genomics. By including a range of topics and opinions, all stemming from the themes we designated at the beginning of our project, we hoped to provide the viewer with a portal through which to learn about and explore their own opinions of the topics at hand. And so to tie it up, Nora will talk a little bit about our connection with Ann Merchant shortly, but Ann Merchant, who is the Director of Communications at the National Academy of Science and Director of the Science and Entertainment Exchange, told us yesterday that the reason she does what she does, again, Nora will explain shortly, is that because art and media are a form of accidental curriculum, the connecting tissue between, science and knowledge. So, without further ado.
So we were lucky enough to be able to partner with Maggie Little here and Laura Bishop in the Kennedy Institute of Ethics already ongoing showcase. So this gave us the publicity, the location, the audience, things that we could not have secured on our own through this project. So we were able to reach we had a greater scope going through the Kennedy Institute than we could have on our own. So our first instinct was to contact artists who deal in this realm of personal genomics and curate art that already exists. But we unfortunately did not have the means of transporting art or the legal backing for liability if anything happened. So instead we decided to send out a call to artists, which you can find in the papers we passed out, to local universities and to one high school in the area. We sent it to all of the art departments, as well as art history, music departments, looking for students who are willing to create and submit art surrounding our themes of the showcase. We received some positive feedback from professors, as well as some realistic feedback that we gave these students a very short time constraint to work in. And so we received a few pieces. Most of them we were not really able to use. One, however, is featured here. It's the interview that you saw over there by a girl at Catholic University in DC. So this left us with having to develop our own art, which as students who are in science classes and rhetoric, we were kind of terrified of that. But with our own work, we were able to touch on topics of privacy, public health benefits, the future of genomics, modes through which you can donate, and then potential risks that surround every form of donation out there. So we mentioned the great things about working with the KIE, the publicity, but one thing about working with a partner who has more experience and more clout in the area that you do than you do is that you must work under their constraints and not necessarily your own. So when we first had our exhibit in the bioethics library on the first day, our pieces were grouped together and in their own little section, so you could clearly tell that they were kind of part of one gallery. And then as we moved to ICC, there was an issue that people were going immediately to our pieces. So Laura wanted our pieces to be spread out throughout the gallery to draw attention in all directions. And we thought this really spoke volumes about the power of art as an engaging and quick way to transmit information over just reading a science article or a science paper. And so this also led to some problems with our marble experiment because there was no clear beginning and end, in which, if you noticed, our questions were intended to gauge your opinion before and after you went through the exhibit. So we do have kind of skewed data on that end. So also next time we plan to, if we continue this, we plan to change the question because it was also skewed in itself. It asked if you would donate for public health reasons, but there are various ways through which you can donate, through commercial means, through just medical means of getting back your own information. So we would have to tailor our question if we wish to continue with the marble. And so the positive feedback of our showcase was wonderful. We had a lot of people talk to us afterwards. We had a lot of people write notes in the guest book, but we realized that we were limited to a very specific audience here at Georgetown, and so we have hopes to expand our message and our mission.
Yeah, so one way we're working to expand this mission to the greater public right now is to curate already existing art, as we initially wanted to do, into a coffee table art book. So currently we're in the process of formulating this art book. Ideally, there would have been a prototype of the art book today.
Yeah, and let me just interject that we're totally on track to do that until one of them was concussed, which is the second semester this happened at the end of the studio. Yes. People get concussions here.
Just because
so that is officially excused. A doctor's noted.
It's like on the safety team or something. Football, yes. Right back in the game. Get right back in the game.
Okay, so keep going.
Okay, so this is a prototype of our art book called Generate, and it's been a very multi-step process. So first, we looked at different pieces of art, ranging from sculptures to films to patterns to poems. And we researched this and then decided which artists we wanted to contact to formulate this book. The next step was to request permission. So I met with Meg Oakley, who's the Director of Copyrights and Digital Rights Management at Lowinger Library, and she helped me come up with a proposed permission letter to make sure that it was a credible we seemed credible when asking to use their art. Yeah, you can also find the letter in your packets. Okay, and so the great majority of artists were very happy to grant us permission to use their art. As you can see, that piece of art specifically is in the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego. So most of these pieces are pieces by credible artists.
Sorry, the ones here are ones you have received permission, or you're still waiting on some?
There's one in there that we're still awaiting permission. That one we're still awaiting permission. So, yeah. So currently we have about 24 to 28 images. And this is a spread right here, so that's 2 different pages, so opened up.
Is that just filler text in there?
Yes.
I don't know, it's our book, right?
So there are still a couple of pending permissions because some of the art we were interested in was published in magazines or newspapers such as the Wall Street Journal, and so that's a very multi-step process in contacting multiple people. But currently we have images of paintings, stills from the documentary In the Family by Joanna Rudnick, pictures of quilts from a woman who takes genetic code and makes quilts for people who contact her, as well as our own art that we're planning to publish in the book. And our plan is to print 20 copies by May 6th to turn one in with the final project. And then there also has been great interest in the artists we requested permission from, as well as the museums we requested permission from, to send them an art book once it is done. And also I've been in contact with Miss France Roxy from the Kennedy Institute, and she would be very happy to have one in the bioethics research library downstairs. So we've gotten great feedback about people who would be interested in the art book. So that's one of the ways we're trying to get the greater public involved in this initiative.
Can we use some of the ethics lab too?
Yeah.
Get a sign.
Of course.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
This is sure. Big deal.
So, although our original gallery was confined to a small audience, we do have some prospective plans to reach a larger audience. As Lena mentioned, yesterday we spoke on the phone with Ann Merchant, and we explained our experience with the gallery at Georgetown and how going forward we want to recruit outside artists who didn't participate in our first one, which was primarily us, and would also need a different space to curate the art. And immediately she listed off a bunch of names of people she's going to speak to about our art gallery, including Ting Wu, who is the director and co-founder of Personal Genomics Education. And she also listed a bunch of potential spaces, including the NAS Art Gallery and the NAS Work Building, which a lot of times they have art installations. However, both of these spaces would target different audiences. So, because one's really open and people will be coming in and out, and the other one is mostly for people who work in the building. So first we're going to have to figure out how exactly we want to narrow down and specify our larger art gallery. So for that, she mentioned that we meet with JD, who is the art director of the cultural programs for the National Academy of Sciences in DC. We're probably going to meet with him sometime in the first week of May. And hopefully with him, we're going to get more guidance and narrow down our audience and figure out who we're going to outreach to and who he wants to speak to and who Ann Merchant wants to connect us with, just to figure out how we're going to continue to raise awareness and questions surrounding personal genomics. So right now our timeline for this is probably going to extend into the summer and maybe next semester, but it depends on Ann Merchant's timeline, other people we're working with, the space, and our schedules. But all in all, we're really excited about what our project is going to lead to.
I'm going to clap now.
So this is very impressive and nice to see, having heard a lot, obviously, about it week to week. So, yes, 2 questions. So one is on the materials. So a lot of it's on, maybe I read it too quickly, but some of it, I don't know if a previous discussion was on, would you contribute for research? And a lot of the projects, though, are like 23andMe, or the art relates to things like 23andMe that are about you getting your personal genome. And those obviously raise different kinds of questions. So you can just talk through how you see the link, and if you want to make distinctions there, it seems kind of conflated here.
Yeah, definitely. So I can speak a little bit to that. So I think initially we decided that the best route to go when presenting for our first crit was to get the greater public involved in donating their genetic information for these public initiatives. However, when we researched further, we became really interested into the kind of backside of 23andMe and all the commercial companies and what their motives were for the $99 you pay to get the kit and get your genetic information tested. And so I think that is one reason why we've decided that if we were to do this again at the National Academy of Science, we definitely want to rewrite that question we asked regarding the marbles, because we realized in the end that although that was our first thought of what we wanted to do, that it didn't necessarily align with the pieces that were actually created.
Okay, that's great. And then Lena,
I was also going to say, so I think we also wanted to be able to reach out, or at least access as many people as possible, and 23andMe is something that's been in the media, so a lot of people have heard about it, so something that could be understood a little bit more.
And just to be clear, I don't have any problem with you doing one or both. It's just mixing them together without making clear the distinction.
Oh yeah, of course. I think also just because the whole realm is so vague to people, we figured that we should talk about 23andMe as a separate entity from the donation, which I guess you're thinking of, because in theory, all the privacy issues with donating your DNA as a member of the national cohort there shouldn't be all the marketing and
Well, there's also not the worry about being misled about
Yeah.
some information about you, because you won't probably get
Yeah.
information back at you. Okay, and then the other broader question, I'll just first parking I wouldn't oversimplify the head, heart, science, art thing, but you did a nice job of presenting it. But on the so how did your own views of this use of personal genomics, either the giving to a federal project or using a kit like 23andMe, change during this project?
Well, for me, in the beginning, we all got the opportunity just because of our project to use one of the 23andMe kits they had here for us, and we all were able to use it. And I, in the beginning, for example, was like, yes, I want to know everything that I can be predisposed to, because I'm sort of a hypochondriac when it comes to those things. I'm gonna get ahead and then once I started researching for this project, once I started researching for everything and all the issues involved, I actually decided not to send my kit. I just left it in the lab, and because I realized actually what all the issues that can be involved. What if I find something that can't be cured, and then I have to how do I deal with knowing that I have that for the rest of my life? Or what if someone finds my information and says no, you can't work here, or no, you can't have life insurance because it's not covered by the GINA Act of 2008. So I just decided not to do it.
That's where let's just go through it and leaving it in the lab. Either way to do that,
Yeah, so it's actually kind of interesting how we're seated, because my views are the same as Valeria's. So during our bioethics course, we actually delved into this topic greatly. And initially, I was very intrigued by the idea of participating in 23andMe. And then through the readings, such as we had to write a paper even on work, somebody whose genetic information got on Facebook, and then how their employer was able to take that and possibly use it against them. So circumstances such as that, as well as even my own well-being about worrying if I have a 10% greater risk of getting this one disease, I decided that I also did not want to participate.
So I sent mine in, but what I did is I did not follow the instructions that say register before you send it in. And so after I dropped it in the mailbox, I went home to register and realized that the registration code is on the spit tube inside. So first I was very angry because that's a $100 kit, and I was very excited to try it out. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, I started thinking of my biggest fear as I thought about it was that you can opt out of giving permission for your name to be attached to your DNA. And so your anonymized information can still be sold to companies, but as more people use 23andMe, or as more people are entered into these data banks, your personal information could be easily linked to someone else who's in one of these data banks, and all of your personal info could be found. You could be targeted for personalized medicine. And so,
How would they find it?
because if you have like a relative who's in one of these data banks and your DNA is closely related, they can.
There's
link back to
also
you.
there was a Wall Street Journal article published in 2013 that I believe we discussed in class. Somebody brought up that there was an initiative to get 1,000 genomes mapped in 2013, and it was completely anonymous. However, 50 identities were eventually discovered because they were able to identify unique genetic markers on the Y chromosomes of the males, and use a computer algorithm to cross match it with the 1,000 anonymous genomes.
So in end, I was kind of relieved that I messed up the process.
Is this the kid you owe us $100? No, like you were surprised how many students did that last semester too. Like half our class last semester just like packaged up stuff and sent it out.
Oh,
Even though we told them and like to
Yeah.
register for it,
I
to follow the instructions. We just did not read the instructions.
Maybe that's a genetic problem.
Right, well, I did send mine in. I haven't got my results back, but I registered and sent mine in, so I'll get it back soon. But also, I think when we realized how much of a variety there was just within our group on whether or not we wanted to send it in or test it, that's when we kind of switched from advocating for everybody to donate their genome to realizing, oh, we just should just raise these questions, make people at least prepared to donate if they wanted to because they thought about the questions. But also, I joined this group second week, and when I came in, you guys were like, "Oh, you're doing genetics," and I was like, "Genetics, what?" But so I, over the course of the semester, I learned so much and realized how this is the next technology that's just accelerating so fast. So it's really exciting. Got to learn so much about it.
Yeah,
So more terrifying.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
So I actually had done 23andMe before the FDA shut down like the results showing.
So can we pause and talk about that a second?
Yeah.
Since you know that.
Yes.
So if you get 23andMe now,
Yes.
do you get any health results
You
back?
do not.
So why does it say you do in your installation?
Because you
can
do
get
have
raw
some.
data.
So you can get the raw data, exactly, which
You
you
get
can
what?
then raw data,
Oh, okay.
which you can then easily Google and figure out, this sequence corresponds with this trait or this health.
I understand,
thing.
but this says 23andMe will give you health results.
I think
our intention was the raw data, and it just came across a little jumbled.
There are other companies like Personal, like Navigenics or Path something that do the same services like 23andMe, but that just haven't been shut down. But it's not just 23andMe that can provide your health predisposition.
But the direct to consumer, as opposed to those that go through a medical professional, are not allowed by the FDA to give out health information. That's not the impression we get reading that installation.
So it's mildly misleading.
Because you just want to be, especially as I think if you, well, in general, boo-boo.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that if you spent a semester on genetics and knew that about this, right? But also, as you're thinking of doing an installation where scientists are around, this has to be,
Yeah.
for credibility, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were thinking that because it's so easy to take raw data and find the traits that correspond with it, that which we haven't done ourselves.
You could
so-
say those words, actually, that would be an interesting comment.
You
Yes,
can say it.
but let's also be honest, the worry that you were highlighting, which was a worry back when 23andMe came out, is that you're excited, so you do the spit test, and you get back scary information. That's very different than getting back raw data and then being one of the 1% of people who know that there's protease databases out there that you can go and then figure it all out. That's not the objection that you're representing there. Because you're not against people doing hard work to find out their health information at all. What you were worrying about is people who do a drug test that sounds exciting and then get, whoa, that I'm at double the risk of whatever. So the fact that you get raw data back and could
Isn't the same as
is not at all the
being
same.
presented. Yeah, very true.
I guess also that was one of the issues, but our issue, or like at least my worry with 23andMe was the fact that upon reading their privacy letter, they do have like a lot of real issues with the company, like the right to sell your data to other companies, or like if the company is bought by another company, your data is transferred.
No, absolutely.
So that
Privacy, that was a different thing.
Yeah.
That one,
True.
Did you
Going
say
off of that, this is, no, you can.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
just gonna
finish.
say,
I
yeah,
forgot.
I was gonna
Finish your thing.
So anyway, I was saying I got it, 2.5 years ago, mostly because my mom encouraged me to, because she's like a genealogy nut. But also because I'm an identical twin. I have a little brother with a severe genetic disorder. I have an older sister who was raised in different households. So my entire upbringing has been a pseudo genetic experiment. And so I thought it would be really cool. I mean, it really has twin studies. My little brother has deletion positive disorder. All these things are really cool. So
In a way, all of us live a pseudo-genetic
Yeah, very
experiment,
true.
but anyway.
Yeah.
keep going.
But so I did it with no reservations and got my health information back, and admittedly didn't learn anything that was earth-shattering, so I'm not all that affected by it. I have a higher propensity for gout, so I'll avoid
There you go.
a lot of rich foods, I guess.
Avoid the 18th
But-
century.
Yeah, exactly. But
Oh, I know.
it does. Okay.
Can I ask one thing on that, and then just go on to others? But just why did you do? Given that you had those real family reasons, why did you go through 23andMe instead of some more medical?
Yeah, good question. I think because it was so easy, readily available and accessible.
And a lot cheaper than
Okay.
any
Yeah.
medical
Yeah, right.
lab.
Yeah,
Turns
and
out
so that's, again, my opinion has not changed. If anything, it's actually probably tended towards more supportive of personal genomics. I also have taken genomics and bioinformatics as part of my major, and so I learned all about how you access this information, and it's really cool. It's a very cool emerging field that is hard to understand, just like you have to understand how to use all these databases. But I don't know, I just think it's a fascinating, exciting field that should be more valued. And then as a side note, my identical twin sister sent in her 23andMe right after FDA had shut down. So, but now she knows all our information because. So, yeah.
That's another question. On the piece that's called The Interview, one of you, I think it was you, mentioned Gina, the Non-Discrimination Act. So tell me your understanding of what Gina says about that scenario.
Okay. Where originally, once this field emerged, there were worries that employers or your insurance could use this information against you. Let's say if you're a basketball player and you have 50% chance of heart disease, then they could be oh, I'm sorry, you can't play for us anymore. So in 2008, I believe the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act was passed, in which they said that employers or regular insurance can't discriminate upon your genetic information. But the fact is that it excludes life insurance and something else.
Small companies.
And small companies. So that's still.
Good job.
But then with that piece, just explore, it's an interview basically, and if you look at the resume, it shows the genetic information of just to demonstrate in a way how in the future, what if on your resume you have to put your predispositions or
No, I love the piece. It's another example where I think the thematizing text accompanying might benefit from another round of thoughtfulness, because you don't want to spread misinformation or misimpressions. It's not like you're the 23andMe, you're misinforming people. But that one, part of what you'd like to do is give people context, right? It's not just that it could discriminate. There is a very important law in place that has some holes in it. Every non-discrimination law has some holes in it, okay? Actually, it's a very good law, okay? But yeah, you should know about that. But we wouldn't want people you wouldn't want to give people the impression that it's just, the Wild West in terms of privacy and genetics, because that's you want to help people be literate on personal genomics. Just what I mean?
Especially since it took a decade to pass that law.
Also, just a side note to that, we did consider putting more information on the things, but because it was a gallery and an art
So
exhibit,
this is sorry.
it's
And then I'll
hard.
But I would just want to name that that's your challenge. You need to embrace that, because you're absolutely right. The answer to what I just said is not to here's a full footnoted set of information and shoot me now. But that is exactly what the challenge of curating an art show to create an impression. Very few words to get across good, deep context understanding. And that, so embrace it and lean into that. That's fun. Okay.
Don't deal with it by making them type smaller.
To pick up exactly on where Maggie left off, I have 3 quick things, and 2 of them are really complementary, right? So one of you already mentioned something like this, but I think we should all be giving you a lot of credit for starting with one very specific intentional direction and message and having the research turn you in a different direction. That pivot is like exactly what should be happening in this kind of work. And I'm not sure it's happened for all the groups. That's huge, and like I just give you a lot of credit for it. Number 2, the first question I wrote down when you started talking was why art, but you did directly address it. That depending on where you are and what your field is, like you may have an affinity for your answer, more or less, right? Personally, I adore it. I go to Woolly Mammoth Theater a lot, and their lobbies are full of this sort of show about social issues. It's a thing, and I think it works really well. Number 3, this is like the not, like, you know, in love with comment, right? So it's about writing, basically. And as the writing rhetorician guy, I'm gonna riff just for a second on this. Like it stands out, like the book looks like it's gonna be effing amazing, right? But there's like no writing in the book as it stands right now. Now there's a lot of stuff you can do. You can source it from the artists, you can source it from the museums that did the original shows. But the same issue that applies to this stuff applies over here too. I'm happy to help, right? Like it's crucial though, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe because of what I do for a living, like when I go to a gallery show, I read as much as I look at the pieces, and it's like a big deal.
I think that's something we're still debating on whether to source from the artist.
Sure.
Yeah.
But give them the opportunity, and if they want it, let them have it, and if they turn it down, then it's up to you guys, and that's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's our route, but thank you for your offer, and we would love to work with you on it.
Absolutely.
And then also, this wasn't in the presentation, but included in the plans for the art book also include in the back a timeline of personal genomics and all the different initiatives and whatnot, as well as further readings and research that people can do in case they're more interested in the field after looking through the book.
So thank you. So I gotta admit, I am every bit the physicist geek that you proposed this idea and I thought, all right, fine. I went into this collaboration with my colleagues thinking I wanted to expand the view of civic engagement, but art, come on. Wonderful. I mean, it's great that you're getting the input that you are about some of the specifics, but let me just generalize and say, really, really well done. I mean, I'm impressive. This was intended as a pilot just to smooth things out, learn from it as you are with this feedback, so that you can then take it to a larger audience. Not just a larger audience, the gold standard of science, which is the academy. I'm delighted to hear that Ann Merchant was so willing to help. So now let's be even more ambitious. So first step was testing the idea. The second step was see if you could get somebody like the academy. Like that's happened. You should start thinking about the next step, which is how do you go after the academy to other places too. And I'm happy to talk about how that can happen as well. And just a question. So how many of you are going to be on campus next fall?
We
And
are
are you
definitely
interested in continuing this
around,
project?
yeah.
Okay.
I'll be here next
Yeah,
spring.
I
but-
also, speaking with Ann Merchant, told her I'm not going to be around, but I'm happy to continue working like
Good.
remotely.
Good.
If I could just really quickly, I also think that might apply to the book. I want to reserve judgment until I see it, a draft of it, but there could be bigger things that you could do with that book beyond 20 copies. So, and I'm happy to follow up on that as well.
There are,
I think
so I
that-
talked to MIT, a friend at MIT Press, and asked if they'd be interested in it. They post like this all the time. They're very interested in it. That said, like I didn't hear like just the way that Matt offered to help, right? And like we have stuff we've done through ethics lab, and I've been wanting to beef up the studio press. So either MIT Press or our other Mason Press.
We need to end to keep our schedule going, but I do want to just say one thing about expanding to that. You have to revisit copyright completely. So, but you know the person to go talk to, but you'll have to get another layer of permission from the artists if you do that.
And that was also the 20 book limit was because that's initially what we included.
Absolutely. I'm just saying there may be other opportunities.
Yeah.
Again, really good work.